Hey friends, are you ready for a wild ride this month? Well, buckle up because the out of bounds energy is off the charts. Stick with me and I'll tell you all about the opportunities and pitfalls with this unbridled energy. And water signs, stay tuned. There's a grand trine and kite formation this month that you'll definitely want to hear about. Well, 2025 has been a year for the history books and it's gonna go out with a bang. So let's take a closer look. We'll start with the out of bounds planets. Mars will be out of bounds for all of December. Then Venus is gonna join in later in the month, followed by Mercury, and the moon will be out of bounds 2 times this month. On December 22nd, the moon, Venus, and Mars will all be out of bounds at the same time, and Mercury, Venus, and Mars are gonna do the same thing. Well, let's break all that down, starting with Mars. When a planet's out of bounds, it seems to have an unobstructed channel for its energy. Think more Mars or turbo Mars. But like everything in astrology, this has its pros and cons. On the pro side, Mars out of bounds is great for innovation, success in a competitive field, or pushing past personal limits. Mars out of bounds can have us aim for a personal best and actually make it happen. Now, Mars also has to do with our desire nature. Mars relates to our ego-based drives. It's the part of us that says, I want. And it's also related to our libido and anything that heats us up. And that includes the fun stuff that I'm not gonna name in order to keep this video rated PG, but also the stuff that gets us hot with anger. When Mars is out of bounds in someone's natal chart, their libido or desire can have an unchecked quality. The person doesn't always have the impulse to set personal limits. Your mileage may vary here depending on Saturn's aspects, but consider Tiger Woods, a great example of the pros and cons of having Mars out of bounds in the natal chart. He was born with Mars conjunct his MC, and boy was he driven to achieve his professional goals. As you know, he's been wildly successful in a very competitive field. But that libido side of Mars also got him into big trouble because he wasn't able to set healthy limits on his actions. And at the same time, he was dishonest with his wife and he hid several relationships with women from her. And that's the recipe that got him into trouble. To work well with Mars out of bounds, we need to live by the axiom, first do no harm. And it's also going to serve us well to aim for a kind of raw honesty with those we love the most. Now, thinking about Mars out of bounds as a transit, we all have access to this energy in the collective this month. It's just not a lifetime drive in the way it is for those born with this placement. Still, we can apply some of the same advice. So practice observing what drives your actions this month. What do you really want? What turns you on? And what gets you red hot angry? Once you're clear, take a beat before taking action and consider, who else is this going to impact? Am I being honest, clear, and direct? Am I being respectful and acting in full integrity? Now, those of you who already know some astrology will hear some shades of Saturn in that questioning, and that's for a reason. When Mars is out of bounds, it's well outside Saturn's influence, so those questions can be a little more challenging to access. But Mars always comes back in bounds, and Saturn will eventually have its say. So it's better to bring Saturn's reserve and responsibility into the conversation with Mars out of bounds early, even when Saturn isn't actually making an aspect. I promise you'll thank me later. And all of this can lead you to a next level question. How do I now choose to use my energy with Mars with this new awareness? Now, another Mars out of bounds dynamic that's worth mentioning is that some of you are going to get a wild hair to do something uncharacteristic or off the wall. And if that's you, take a time out and reality check this new impulse with your friends. If you can wait until the end of January, when Mars comes back down from its declination peak, you might very well see things differently. And if so, you will have avoided some of the pitfalls of doing something in haste that you later regret. Well, that said, not everything Mars out of bounds is going to ignite in you is something that you'll regret later. Your craving is telling you something important. Some of you will use this energy to boldly innovate or defend something that's important to you or to someone else. So the advice to hold back and observe doesn't always apply in every situation. In fact, getting out of the way and unleashing your will be a better choice for some of you. As always, you're going to have to do the hard work of navigating those options using a combo of wits and intuition. But there's more to this story because Venus makes up another side of our desire nature, the part that has to do with attraction. Where Mars says, I want, Venus says, I like. And Venus also says, I don't like. So the attraction-aversion dynamic is Venus's terrain. And all of that gets amplified this month when Venus goes out of bounds from December 21st through January 4th. Now, while Venus is out of bounds, we might have a little less ability to resist the temptation of attraction, whether that's to a person, a place, or a thing. And as I say that out loud, I'm already worried about my own dessert boundaries. Now, the holidays tend to already be a time when we exercise less restraint in general, and maybe especially around eating. And that tradition goes all the way back to at least the Roman Saturnalia and probably further. When we add the out-of-bounds desire planets to that holiday and end-of-year mix, well, I think I can safely predict a few more tummy hangovers than usual this year. But on the positive side of Venus out of bounds, this placement's also strong in the charts of people who unleash their creativity without restraint. If you're an artist, allow yourself to paint in a different medium this month, or maybe just follow whatever creative whims strike your fancy. The same advice holds for writers, filmmakers, graphic designers, musicians, etc. Venus is trying to take you somewhere you haven't gone before, and it could be pretty cool. The end of the month, Mercury joins this out-of-bounds crew on December 29th and stays in that range through January 16th. So from December 29th all the way through January 4th, all three inner planets are going to be out of bounds at the same time. Now that triple threat is pretty rare, and to get a sense of it, we have a great example with Icelandic musician Björk. If you're my age, you remember Björk bursting onto the music scene with some original and creative pop music. But after that first album, Björk didn't follow the well-trodden path toward more mainstream success by adjusting her music to fit the proven recipes of pop hits. Instead, each album just got more and more innovative. Now, sure, some of you are going to describe that same progression as each album got weirder and weirder, but others truly appreciate the unbridled creativity she channels. With Björk, you can really see this potential of out-of-bounds planets, but also something truly unique and extreme in its expression. Now, this kind of creative potential is available to all of us during this period with all three inner planets out of bounds, which I'll repeat is from December 29th through January 4th. So mark your calendar and step outside your daily routines and your daily grind and explore what's possible. Now, if you have natal Mercury, Venus, or Mars out of bounds, any one of them, this month presents a unique opportunity to learn something about those natal placements. And you'll also learn something about the special gift that you're here to share with the world, even if it seems like the rest of us aren't quite ready for it. Now, there's even more to this story, because the moon goes out of bounds twice this month, from December 4th to 8th, and from December 18th to 22nd. So on December 21st and 22nd, we have the moon, Venus, and Mars all out of bounds. This suggests that in addition to watching your desire nature, your emotional reactions are well worth tracking on these days. So bring your best emotional intelligence resources to bear, but also use this time to learn something about your habitual responses to life and your natural reactions. Now, to wrap up this section, because so many planets are out of bounds this month, this is a rare opportunity to both observe and work with this energy. There's another alignment this month that's full of positive potential. It's that grand water trine I mentioned earlier and a kite aspect pattern. Now, both of those take some time to break down, so I'm just going to give you the Cliff's Notes version today. But if you want to learn more, check out my webinar on grand trines at Astrology University, or our longer course on major aspect patterns that includes some discussion of the grand trine and the kite and a few other patterns. But let's get into it. Starting on December 3rd, Mercury comes in range of forming a grand trine with Jupiter and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. This means that all three water signs are going to be represented and activated this month. If you have planets in the late degrees of any of the water signs, pay close attention to this time period, because there's an opportunity to tap into some generative flow in that area of your life this month. If that area or those areas are places you're often stuck, then make sure to put some effort into jump-starting progress there. A lot of astrologers will caution that a grand trine can pass by unexpressed because we get so comfortable that we just don't make any effort. But don't make that mistake this month. A shortcut for activating a grand trine is to just pick one of those planets that you're the most comfortable with, and then take some action to express whatever that planet represents. Doing something with at least one of the planets in a grand trine can get the others to respond because they're all there to support each other. Mercury or Jupiter might be great choices this month. For instance, you could initiate an important conversation or do some deep research. Mercury's going to be in Scorpio. Or to access Jupiter in Cancer, you could make a vision board or take a soul-nourishing personal growth workshop, especially one that includes sharing with others. With the water emphasis, your emotions are your guide here. Follow the breadcrumbs your feelings are leaving you this month and trace them back to the source to learn more. Make use of the gift that connection offers and move that needle toward a more authentic form of relating with those in your personal sphere. Throughout this period, ask, what do I need to shift or respond to inside to tap into a flow state? Meanwhile, Mercury's going to be applying to an opposition with Uranus, which turns this grand trine into a kite, and that's especially potent from December 7th to 9th. This pulls that magnetic swirl of emotional subjectivity from the trine into a face-off with something or someone that might be rebellious, disruptive, or liberating. To make the most of it, dive into those turbulent waters headfirst and see where it takes you. The ride might just be exhilarating and lead to a breakthrough. These will be important dates to watch in the collective too. So to repeat, that's around December 3rd to December 9th. Look out for some movement in those big collective stories that are unfolding around those days. As usual, some of us are going to use these energies for a wide range of end goals, from altruistic to totally selfish, some with good intentions and some with bad intentions. It's personally empowering if we let go of that idea out there that the planets are doing something to us and instead think of the planetary energies themselves as neutral. And then it's how we use them and channel them that directs them into more or less positive directions. So our intention, integrity, and clarity are always important resources. With that, let's turn our attention back to Mars out of bounds because it forms an important aspect in the middle of that kite pattern. And we needed to understand something about both of those things to talk about it. With Mars out of bounds, signaling a time of less personal restraint than usual, there's a tendency for more people than usual to fly off the handle. We'll see the negative and the positive sides of that in the collective, of course. And this includes a range from extreme bravery to childish reactivity. Research I've done of individuals who make the headlines while Mars out of bounds totally backs this up. Well, the US appears to be especially sensitive to this transit, and that might be because Mars is out of bounds in the US charts that use the date July 4th, 1776. Now, I'm not going to name some of the darker expressions that I've observed in this video for several reasons, but just think about the bad choices that some people make in the heat of anger and then connect the dots on your own. This is why I spent so much time earlier talking about the importance of observing yourself and then consciously choosing how to express your Mars rather than letting your passion get the best of you. Now, with all of that in mind, this Mars story gets even more complex when it squares Saturn on December 8th and then Neptune on December 14th. Those dates overlap with the kite pattern we talked about, so we really want to pay attention to this period because this Mars Saturn-Neptune aspect could throw us a curveball. Now, Saturn and Neptune are still conjunct this month and pretty much all year and into next year, so it's worth interpreting them together. But we can also break down this aspect a little bit. First, when Mars and Saturn come together, they often require us to cultivate inner tenacity. We might try to get our way, but we meet frustration. And then it's as if the planets are asking, how bad do you really want this? Now, if you say, really bad, they might reply, okay, well, settle in and roll up your sleeves because you're going to have to put in some extra effort to get what you want here. Now, if you have this aspect in your natal chart, you know very well what I'm talking about. But for the rest of us, these Mars-Saturn days can be days when we really feel like the cards are stacked against us. Maybe we're running late to a really important appointment and we don't have any padding in our schedule for delays, and then we hit a literal roadblock and we're not physically able to get there in time. What do? Do we give up, or do we muster some grit and determination and find another way. By the way, this aspect is going to be a bigger deal for you if you have planets in the late mutable degrees between, say, 23 and 29 degrees of the mutable signs. Now, I've been watching this aspect for a few years, and I'll just share a little hack that I've used personally in the past. Because this aspect tends to be pretty quick when Mars isn't retrograde, like now, it's often easier than it looks to just wait it out. If you encounter one of those classic Mars-Saturn roadblocks or conflicts, try stepping back rather than responding right away. Just take a break, check the calendar, and then plan to revisit the issue after, say, Mars goes into Capricorn on December 15th. Now, that's not a long time to wait. If you try to fight it out during the peak of the square, you might need to make a lot more effort. Now, I'll acknowledge, sometimes you just can't wait. And if that's you, channel your stress into constructive action and do your best. Now, this hack is only going to work for those who do have the luxury of taking that extra time. And to figure out which situation you're actually in, make sure to honestly ask yourself if you can wait it out. Because some of you are going to say you can't, but really, it's either just that you don't want to, or that you're so attached to your Saturn shoulds that you don't realize that you actually have a choice. Make sure you understand the difference. Now remember that with Mars in the mix, your own will could be a piece of the problem. Now it gets a bit tricky when we add in Neptune. Mars square Neptune alone can correlate with murky terrain that just makes it a challenge to even figure out what you actually want. Or maybe you say you want one thing, but your actions are telling a really different story. For some of you, this is because the unconscious is breaking through and it has its own agenda. Maybe you're meant to find some balance between action and surrender. Now, sometimes Neptune is helping us learn about our real Mars desires. If we're still in denial, it's easy to ignore the evidence by denying responsibility for our actions and then writing it off as that's not really me. This is one reason this aspect gets described in some astrology books as signaling shady behavior. Now, of course, there are also intentionally shady people out there, and they might use this aspect to try to pull off a really big grift. I wonder if there are people in the collective right now that this might relate to. As I record this, there's yet another sensational story brewing in the United States, so watch these developments closely. Scandals are also in Neptune's domain. But then again, maybe it's more complicated than that, because it's not just Neptune alone right now. Saturn's conjunct Neptune, and Saturn can help us see through a grift or to see through an illusion. So maybe, as some major players try to pull the wool over our eyes, they don't totally get away with it because the rest of us are watching them in plain sight. And another thing we've witnessed all year is that the judicial system keeps attempting to enforce checks and balances. Now, they've had varying levels of success, and there's a real mess there. And that's Neptune in the mix with Saturn too. So I think we're going to see more developments in that story as well. On a personal level, there's an even deeper invitation to explore the personal will and desire through this Mars transit to Saturn and Neptune, especially important for those of you with late mutable planets. And also take a look at how our will responds in the face of Saturn-Neptune disillusionment, which is an instrumental dynamic of this important transit. Disillusionment means seeing through an illusion. At first, disillusionment is really rough because we have attachment to our favorite illusions. When we see through a big illusion like that, our first response is painful letdown. How many times have you heard this story, for instance? Influential spiritual teacher comes along and teaches this high ideal, and everyone in the spiritual community is expected to live according to that ideal. Well, then one day it comes out that the teacher not only doesn't live according to that ideal, but does something totally contrary to it. Meanwhile, they're requiring their followers to hold the ideal. Now, as one of those followers who's been lifted up by the teachings up until that point, what do you do in that moment? A lot of folks are just going to throw in the towel and say something like, wow, I guess all of that was just BS. Everything I thought was meaningful actually means nothing. What do I do now? But disillusionment can help us get more clear about what's truly possible, about what's real. So there's an opportunity to realize that the channel for the message was just a human after all, but maybe there is something redeemable in that original ideal that we were so enamored with. And maybe there is something worth saving in that teaching. So with Mars square Saturn and Neptune, and remember, Mars is also going to be out of bounds in this mix, how do you respond to disillusionment in this moment personally. In the collective, there are a lot of folks who stand to be disillusioned. That is, if they don't continue to be in denial about the big grift. All right, with that, I just want to say thanks for listening. This year, a few of my forecast videos reached a much wider audience, so thanks so much to those of you who do enjoy the forecast and share it with your friends. I really appreciate hearing from those of you who write in. I've heard from some of you that have found the forecast helpful or said that it generated a positive insight at just the right moment. I'm always humbled and grateful to hear those kinds of messages. Now, for those of you who are looking for more astrological insight or who want to learn more about astrology, head over to Astrology University, where we have an incredible team of world-class astrologers to guide you. Next year, we have another summit planned in March, so mark your calendars. We'll invite some of your favorite astrologers, and we're thinking about tackling the fate versus free will conversation, so let me know in the comments if that sounds interesting. And jump on our email list to find out when registration opens. We also have in-depth courses almost every month. For instance, this month in December 2025, we're digging into the ever-impactful Jupiter and Saturn with Mark Jones, Darby Costello, and myself. In another course, we're learning about the healing magic of sign polarities with Dr. Saffron Rossi. Then we learn how to spot major themes in the chart in our course Chart Synthesis 201, always a popular one. Kathy Rose is going to share her therapeutic mantras for healing tension in the horoscope on December 6th. I'm ready to hear that one right now. And Mark Jones will take us on an inspiring exploration of the sacred design of the 12 zodiac glyphs on December 13th. And don't miss the always popular year ahead forecast with Kelly Surtees on December 20th. Well, thanks for tuning in today. And until next time, take good care of yourself and each other.